Whispers of Chapter 1, Echoes of the Past. The air had that perfect blend of late summer warmth and early autumn crispness. With a day to herself, Debbie decided to leave the familiar streets of her town and venture into its lesser-known outskirts. As she meandered down the winding roads, with Halo playfully darting around and Shadow maintaining a steady pace beside her, she took in the beautiful countryside. The scent of blooming wildflowers filled the air, and the distant rolling hills painted a serene backdrop. The path gradually led to a dense thicket of trees, and as they walked further, the canopy grew thicker, casting playful shadows on the ground. Halo, with his mischievous nature, was trying to chase the flickering sunlight, while Shadow, ever the mature one, seemed more interested in the various intriguing scents around. Suddenly, the forested path opened up, and there it stood, Wiltshire Mansion. Even in its apparent state of neglect, the manor was imposing. The sprawling estate, with its towering turrets and expansive grounds, hinted at its former glory. Nature had begun to reclaim it, with ivy snaking its way up the brick walls and moss covering the stone pathway leading to its grand entrance. Intrigued, Debbie approached an old man who was sitting nearby, feeding pigeons. "Excuse me, sir," she began politely. "Could you tell me about this place?" The man looked up, adjusting his spectacles. The Wiltshire Mansion," he began with a hint of nostalgia. "It was the gem of our town, once upon a time. Belonged to the Wiltshire family, mighty rich folks. They were. But it's been abandoned for years now. Some say it's haunted." "Haunted?" Debbie stammered slightly, a mix of skepticism and thrill in her voice. The old man nodded gravely. "After Sir Edgar Wiltshire passed away some 50 years ago, under mysterious circumstances, strange things started happening. Lights in the windows, eerie sounds, shadows moving about, the usual haunted house tales." Halo, sensing Debbie's unease, nuzzled her hand playfully, while Shadow's alert eyes scanned the surroundings. "Has anyone tried to explore it since?" Debbie asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Several have," he replied, "but most folks in town stay clear. It's become a sort of taboo, and the few brave souls who ventured inside, they talk about cold spots, unexplained noises, and an overpowering sense of being watched." Despite the chilling tales, or perhaps because of them, Debbie felt a growing determination to uncover the mansion's secrets. She thanked the old man for his stories and walked toward the mansion's entrance, her faithful Labradors by her side. The large double doors, although slightly ajar, creaked ominously as she pushed them open. The vast entrance hall was a testament to the Wiltshire family's opulence. Grand chandeliers now covered in dust, portraits of stern-looking ancestors lining the walls, and a majestic staircase winding its way upstairs. Halo, always the curious one, began to investigate the vast space, sniffing at old pieces of furniture and wagging his tail at his reflections in the cracked mirrors. Shadow, however, remained close to Debbie, his senses alert. "I don't know about ghosts," Debbie murmured, more to herself than to the dogs, "but there's definitely a story here. And I intend to find out what it is." Unbeknownst to her, as she ventured deeper into the mansion, a pair of eyes watched her from one of the upper windows, curious, wary, but not malicious. Chapter 2, Mansion's Mystique. The mansion seemed to breathe history, each room narrating tales of its splendid past. As Debbie walked through, she could feel the weight of countless stories pressing on her, urging her to uncover them. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunbeams peeking through the stained glass windows. Echoes of laughter, cries, and whispers seemed to hum just below the edge of audibility. Entering the library, Debbie was met with rows upon rows of ancient books. Pulling out a particularly dusty volume, she blew off the dust, revealing a family crest on the leather-bound cover. The book seemed to be a journal or diary of sorts. Curiously, she began to read. As she delved deeper into the journal, a vivid picture of the Wiltshire family began to emerge. They were more than just wealthy aristocrats. They were influencers, shaping the direction of their town for generations. Yet, behind the veneer of wealth and power, there were veiled mentions of secret dealings, smuggling operations, perhaps and alliances, with some unsavory characters. Halo was, by now, amusing himself by chasing his own shadow around the room, his playful antics causing Debbie to smile occasionally. But it was Shadow's sudden alertness that caught her attention. The serious Labrador had stationed himself by a large, ornate desk in the corner, his gaze fixed intently on a drawer. Approaching the desk, Debbie discovered that the drawer was slightly ajar. Inside, she found an envelope, its edges yellowed with age. Pulling out the contents, she found a series of letters. They were correspondences between Sir Edgar Wiltshire and an unknown individual, identified only by the initial. The tone was tense, even confrontational. There was talk of betrayal and mention of a final shipment that could ruin both of us if discovered. However, what truly sent chills down Debbie's spine was the last letter, dated just days before Sister Edgar's mysterious death. It read, "You've pushed me too far, eh? Our last venture was the final straw. Watch your back." Could these be indications of a motive for Sir Edgar's death? If Sir Edgar was indeed involved in shady dealings, had they led to his demise? Piecing together the information, Debbie decided she had to know more about Sir Edgar's final days. The mansion itself held some answers, but she also felt the town and its longtime residents would have tales to share. She began to explore further, discovering more about the man who was Sir Edgar Wiltshire. Paintings depicted a stern-looking man with piercing eyes, but other findings a child's drawing labeled for Daddy, an old music box, a photograph of Sir Edgar laughing with a woman who might have been his wife showed glimpses of a different, more personal side. In the ballroom, Debbie could almost hear the sounds of music and dancing. A grand chandelier hung above, its crystals reflecting the room's past grandeur. Yet, amidst the beauty, the room held an air of sadness. Halo, sensing Debbie's somber mood, trotted over, tail wagging, hoping to cheer her up. He always had a knack for lightening the atmosphere. And it worked, as Debbie found herself chuckling and ruffling his golden fur. Just as she was about to leave the room, a glint from a small table caught her eye. On it lay a newspaper clipping from 50 years ago. The headline read, "Tragic Accident or Foul Play?" The mysterious death of Sir Edgar Wiltshire remains unsolved. It seemed the town had its own speculations, and many believed there was more to Sir Edgar's death than met the eye. Determined to learn more, Debbie decided her next step would be to visit the local archives and perhaps speak to some of the older town residents. There was a mystery here, one that spanned decades, and she was intent on unraveling it. As the sun began to set, the mansion cast long, eerie shadows. Exiting the main doors, with Halo and Shadow by her side, Debbie took one last look at Wiltshire Mansion. She was certain of one thing: she'd be back, and she would uncover its secrets. Chapter 3: A Curious Invitation. The next morning was crisp and clear, with a hint of autumn in the air. As Debbie went about her morning routine, baking a batch of cinnamon buns and brewing some coffee, she noticed an elegantly sealed envelope amidst the usual stack of bills and magazines. The handwriting was beautiful, though unfamiliar. Carefully, she broke the wax seal and unfolded the parchment paper. The message was concise. "Dearest Debbie, you are cordially invited to an evening soiree at Wiltshire Mansion, tomorrow at 8 o'clock. We are most eager to meet you. Anonymous." Debbie's brow furrowed in confusion. Who could have possibly known about her little excursion to the mansion? She had told no one, and certainly the mansion was not the usual venue for parties. She felt a nudge against her leg and looked down to find Halo, tail wagging, looking up at her with those playful, innocent eyes, a stark contrast to Shadow's more contemplative gaze. "Looks like we're popular, boys," she mused, showing them the invitation. Shadow tilted his head to one side, as if trying to understand the significance, while Halo seemed more interested in the cinnamon bun aroma wafting through the air. Despite her apprehension, Debbie's innate curiosity was piqued. The invitation was too enticing to resist. Moreover, attending the event could provide her with valuable insights into the mansion's mysteries. The following evening, as the sun's last rays painted the sky in hues of pink and orange, Debbie found herself standing outside Wiltshire Mansion once more. This time, however, the imposing structure was far from abandoned. Warm light emanated from its windows, soft music played from within, and the scent of blooming roses filled the air. She was greeted at the entrance by a man in a tuxedo. "Miss Debbie, we've been expecting you. And these must be Halo and Shadow," he said with a smile, extending his hand for the dogs to sniff. They seemed to approve, for they wagged their tails and allowed the man to lead them in. The main hall had been transformed into a grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their light reflecting off the polished marble floor. Elegant tables adorned with silverware and fresh flowers were set for dinner. But what surprised Debbie the most was the gathering itself. The room buzzed with chatter and laughter, yet there wasn't a single face she recognized. The guests, dressed in evening gowns and suits, seemed both from a time gone by and from various walks of life. A hushed whisper ran through the crowd as Debbie entered, causing her to become slightly self-conscious. Yet before she could ponder the reason, a tall, slender woman, adorned in a vintage dress with pearls, approached her. "Miss Debbie," she began, her voice silky and melodic, "so glad you could join us. Your inquisitiveness about the mansion has not gone unnoticed. I believe you have questions, and we, in turn, are quite curious about you." Taken aback, Debbie managed to respond, "I'm sorry, but who are you? And why this gathering?" The woman smiled enigmatically. "All in due time. For now, please enjoy the evening. And perhaps, by its end, some of your questions will be answered." As the night unfolded, Debbie was treated to a lavish feast, beautiful music, and dance. She interacted with various guests, each sharing snippets and stories about the mansion and its history. Halo, with his playful demeanor, quickly became the star of the party, with guests laughing and dancing with him. Shadow, on the other hand, was more reserved, sticking close to Debbie and observing the crowd. Yet, as the clock chimed midnight, the evening's mystery deepened. The guests began to fade away, quite literally, vanishing before Debbie's very eyes, leaving behind only the echoes of their laughter and the music. The once lively ballroom now stood silent and empty. Startled and slightly unnerved, Debbie, with Halo and Shadow close behind, hurriedly made her way to the entrance. As she stepped out into the cool night, the mysterious woman's voice echoed once more. "Remember, Miss Debbie, not everything is as it seems." Clutching the invitation with her loyal companions by her side, Debbie made her way home, her mind swirling with more questions than answers. What had she just witnessed? And what did it mean for her quest to unravel the mysteries of Wiltshire Mansion? Only time would tell. Chapter 4. The Midnight Gathering. Still reeling from the inexplicable soiree, Debbie couldn't shake off the idea that she'd stepped through time, or perhaps even reality. As she entered her kitchen the next day, she found Halo pawing at a scrap of paper he'd fished from the waste bin. Shadow sat more stoically, as always, watching every move she made. After shooing Halo away from the trash, Debbie's eyes fell on the invitation from the previous evening, which was lying on her table. She picked it up and examined it again, half expecting the words to have changed or vanished. But no, it remained the same, a piece of the puzzle that made no sense. As she sat there contemplating, a sudden knock startled her. Debbie rose, went to the door, and opened it. A postman stood there holding a small package. "Miss Debbie? A parcel for you," he said, handing it over before walking away. Curious, she opened the package to find an old-fashioned key and a note. "Consider this the key to more answers. Midnight, Wiltshire Mansion. A friend." The message was cryptic, but clearly intended to lure her back to the mansion. This time, however, she would be prepared. She decided to invite a few locals known for their investigative talents to accompany her. That night, as the clock neared midnight, Debbie arrived at the mansion. Shadow was alert, his eyes scrutinizing the dark corners of the building, while Halo wagged his tail, seemingly excited for another adventure. But they weren't alone. "Ah, you made it," said Phyllis, an older woman wrapped in a shawl that had seen better days. "I've long wanted to unlock the secrets of this mansion. I am a distant relative of the Wiltshires, you see." Debbie also recognized Leo, a young historian always buried in books. He was holding a stack of old papers and seemed eager to delve into the mansion's past. Sylvia, a woman known for her mediumistic talents, was already there. Her eyes closed as if she was sensing the spirits that might be dwelling in the mansion. And finally, there was Gerald, a property developer who'd been eyeing the mansion for years. "Think of the potential," he said, rubbing his hands together. "A luxury hotel with historical tours, maybe even a golf course." The clock struck midnight, and the front door creaked open, seemingly by itself. "Shall we?" said Debbie, key in hand, feeling as if she was about to step into another chapter of a living storybook. The group, guided by the dim light of Leo's vintage lantern, moved into the hall. As they stepped onto the creaky floors, Phyllis began recounting family legends about hidden rooms and long-lost Wiltshire treasures. Leo was quick to join in, citing historical records that hinted at the mansion's colorful past. Sylvia, meanwhile, seemed deep in concentration. "The spirits are active tonight," she whispered, raising her hands as if trying to channel their energy. Gerald seemed oblivious to the atmosphere, muttering calculations about square footage and renovation costs under his breath. As they reached the heart of the mansion, Debbie took out the key and inserted it into an inconspicuous door she'd noticed the other night. It turned effortlessly, and the door swung open, revealing a hidden room covered in dust and cobwebs, but filled with antiques, portraits, and old manuscripts. Shadow growled softly, his eyes fixed on a shadowy corner of the room. Halo, sensing the tension, stopped wagging his tail. Debbie felt a shiver run down her spine. A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the lantern. When the group relit the lantern, they found a painting of a man who looked eerily similar to Sir Edgar Wiltshire, only much younger. But that wasn't what caught their attention, it was the eyes, which seemed to follow their every move. Phyllis gasped. Leo dropped his papers. Sylvia's eyes widened, and even Gerald seemed to lose his composure. As for Debbie, she tightened her grip on the key, sensing that they were on the verge of an incredible discovery or a perilous adventure. Either way, it was too late to turn back now. Chapter 5. The Canine Clue. As the chilling atmosphere in the hidden room slowly settled, Debbie and the group began inspecting the antiquities around them. The room was a veritable time capsule, holding onto memories of a bygone era. But amidst the initial shock, a mouse had scuttled across the floor. Halo, ever the playful one, immediately forgot the eeriness of the surroundings and dashed after the tiny creature, knocking a few books in the process. As the mouse disappeared behind a bookshelf, Halo began pawing frantically at it. The shelf groaned, shifted, and then swung open, revealing another room. "Leave it to Halo to find a hidden room within a hidden room," Debbie said, laughing lightly to relieve the tension. Shadow, ever the loyal protector, entered first, making sure it was safe. The room appeared to be a gallery of sorts, dominated by portraits of members of the Wiltshire family. Generations of stern, aristocratic faces stared down at them. The portraits showcased the family's heritage, from proud knights and regal ladies to scholars and merchants. But one frame, quite larger than the rest and positioned centrally, was glaringly empty. Debbie approached the empty frame, its gilded edges hinting at the significance of whoever once occupied it. As she stared at the empty space, she wondered aloud, who could have been so essential to the Wiltshire family that they'd occupy such a central position? And yet, why is the portrait missing? Sylvia, the medium, hesitantly approached the frame. She reached out to touch it, but quickly withdrew her hand. "There's a strong energy here," she murmured. This person was important, but also surrounded by a lot of pain and mystery. While the humans contemplated the empty frame, Shadow, with his keen sense of smell, began sniffing around its base. With gentle nudges, he revealed an overlooked detail, a broken pendant, half buried under layers of dust. It was ornate, made of gold, and held a deep blue gemstone that shimmered even in the dim light. The pendant had a crest that matched the Wiltshire emblem. Debbie picked it up, examining it closely. The craftsmanship was exquisite, suggesting it wasn't just an ordinary piece of jewelry, but perhaps a family heirloom. This must have belonged to the person in the missing portrait, she mused. Leo, always ready with a historical fact, added family heirlooms, especially of this quality, were often passed down to the most esteemed member of the family, or someone of significant importance. Phyllis looked wistfully at the pendant. "It looks familiar. I remember tales of a lost lady of Wiltshire, a woman of beauty and grace, but shrouded in mystery. Rumor had it that she disappeared without a trace, and the family was so heartbroken they removed every reminder of her." That could explain the missing portrait, Debbie pondered. But where did she go? And why leave behind such a significant pendant? Gerald, ever the pragmatist, scoffed. "Old houses, old mysteries. That pendant looks valuable, though. Maybe the Wiltshires hid it here to keep it safe?" Sylvia closed her eyes for a moment, holding the pendant. "This heirloom is filled with emotions, love, loss, longing. It's not just about the value, it's a piece of the Wiltshire heart." Debbie tucked the pendant safely in her pocket. "This mansion is slowly revealing its secrets, one room at a time. We must proceed with caution and respect." With Halo and Shadow leading the way, the group continued their exploration, hopeful and anxious about what they might uncover next. Every corner, every artifact seemed to whisper tales of the past, waiting for someone to finally listen. Chapter 6: Debbie's Delicacies. Debbie always believed in the magic of baking, not the kind that involved wands and potions, but the kind that warmed hearts and opened doors to conversations. Her kitchen was a place of warmth, where the soft aroma of freshly baked bread and the sugary scent of pastries intermingled, creating an inviting atmosphere. She decided to use this to her advantage. She thought, if the mansion holds secrets that its walls won't reveal, perhaps the townsfolk might. And so, she began preparing for a small gathering in her quaint home, sending invitations to some of the older residents of the town. These were people who had grown up hearing tales of the Wiltshire Mansion and might have personal stories or memories connected to it. The day of the gathering arrived, and Debbie's home buzzed with activity. Halo, with his boundless energy, was darting around, welcoming guests, while Shadow took on the role of the calm and composed host, sitting majestically near the fireplace. Debbie laid out an array of her finest baked treats. There were lemon tarts with a delicate dusting of sugar, chocolate chip scones that melted in one's mouth, and her specialty raspberry almond shortbread. As the guests sipped on their tea and sampled the treats, The room was filled with appreciative murmurs. It wasn't long before the tantalizing pastries started doing their magic. The cozy ambiance, combined with the delicious food, made everyone more relaxed and chatty. Mrs. Hensley, a sprightly octogenarian with sparkling blue eyes, started. The Wiltshire Mansion wasn't always a place of mystery. I remember summer balls and garden parties. Sir Edgar was quite the charmer. Mr. Blackwood, an old historian of the town, adjusted his glasses and added, "Yes, but behind all that charm was a man with many secrets. The biggest one was his rumored love affair." The room went quiet, everyone's attention now on Mr. Blackwood. He continued, "Not many knew, but Sir Edgar had a lover, a woman of incomparable beauty. No one knew where she came from, but she was always by his side. Some say she was a foreign aristocrat, while others believe she was an artist he had met during one of his travels." Debbie, intrigued, probed further. "What happened to her?" Mrs. Hensley, with a distant look in her eyes, responded, "She disappeared. Just a few days after Sir Edgar's tragic death. She vanished without a trace. Some say she couldn't bear the pain of his loss, while others whisper that she knew something about his death and chose to run away." Debbie felt a chill run down her spine. The broken pendant, the missing portrait, and now a disappearing lover? The plot thickened. A woman from the back, Mrs. Penrose, a retired schoolteacher known for her sharp memory, spoke up. "I once saw a letter in an old archive. It was written by this mysterious woman. All it said was, 'I'll wait where our souls first met.' It was believed to be her last message to Sir Edgar before she disappeared." Debbie's mind raced. Could the mansion hold more secrets about this woman? Was the hidden room a clue to her disappearance, or perhaps their meeting place? She thanked her guests for their stories, each one adding another piece to the puzzle. As the evening wound down and the townsfolk left, Debbie sat down with a cup of tea, her loyal companions Halo and Shadow by her side. She murmured to herself, "Where did their souls first meet? I need to find out." She knew her investigation was just beginning, and the heart of the mystery lay deep within the walls of the Wiltshire Mansion. With Halo and Shadow's unwavering support, she felt ready to uncover the truths of the past. Chapter 7. Nightly Noises. Moonlight spilled over the Wiltshire Mansion, casting eerie shadows upon its once grand facade. Debbie, standing outside the towering front door, took a deep breath. Armed with a flashlight, a thermos of hot tea, and some of her leftover pastries, she prepared herself for a night inside the mansion. Halo, with his ever-playful demeanor, seemed excited about the adventure, while Shadow's stoic expression was unreadable. Yet Debbie could sense an alertness in him. The main hall greeted them with an air of dormant majesty. Heavy drapes, once a deep shade of maroon, but now faded with time, covered the tall windows. Dust particles danced in the streaks of moonlight, making the room seem alive in its own ancient, slumbering way. Setting up her base in the drawing room, Debbie made herself comfortable on an old chaise lounge. Halo curled up beside her, while Shadow took his position near the door, ears erect, as though guarding against the unseen. Hours passed. Every tick of the grandfather clock echoed throughout the house. The mansion seemed to breathe, its walls whispering tales of bygone eras. Then, around midnight, a soft sound broke the silence, the distant sound of footsteps. Debbie's heart raced as she grabbed her flashlight, signaling the dogs to stay close. The footsteps grew louder, then softer, leading her through a maze of hallways and up the grand staircase. As they reached the top, the footsteps ceased, replaced by soft, melancholic whispers. Debbie strained her ears, trying to discern the words, but they eluded her, floating just out of reach. The whispers seemed to lead her to Sir Edgar's personal study, a room untouched by time. It was filled with shelves of books, maps pinned to the walls, and a grand wooden desk in the center. Shining her flashlight across the room, its beam caught something that glimmered under the dust, a beautifully embossed leather diary with the initials E.W. With trembling hands, Debbie opened it, revealing pages filled with Sir Edgar's neat script. The entry spoke of daily affairs, parties attended, and people met. But as she delved deeper, a recurring name caught her attention: Lillian. Today, I met an angel. Her name is Lillian, read one entry. Further pages revealed Sir Edgar's growing affection. Lillian's laughter is my favorite melody. Her presence fills my lonely world with light. But as Debbie continued, the tone grew somber. Entries became sporadic, filled with worry and sorrow. The secret we harbor is too great. I fear its weight may crush our souls. The final entry was heart-wrenching. Lillian, my love, we played with fire, and now we must pay. If only I could turn back time. A chill ran down Debbie's spine. The broken pendant, the whispered tales, the hidden room. And now this diary, they all hinted at a forbidden romance and a devastating secret. Halo, sensing Debbie's distress, nuzzled her hand comfortingly, while Shadow kept vigil, his eyes scanning the room, ensuring their safety. Pondering the diary's contents, Debbie realized the mansion was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a repository of emotions, memories, and secrets. And she was determined to unravel them all. Returning to her makeshift camp in the drawing room, she made a mental note to research Lillian. As dawn broke and the first rays of sunlight pierced the mansion's gloom, Debbie knew she was one step closer to uncovering the truth about the Wiltshire Mansion and its enigmatic past. Chapter 8. Leo's Lore. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through Debbie's living room as she set out an assortment of her best pastries for her morning guest. The bell rang, and as she opened the door, in stepped Leo, with his scholarly glasses and slightly disheveled hair, holding a stack of old papers and journals. Debbie, thank you for inviting me over. This mansion mystery is just too tantalizing to resist, he said, adjusting his glasses with enthusiasm. Settling down at the coffee table, Debbie poured them both a cup. You mentioned over the phone that you had some insights about the mansion and Sir Edgar. I'm all ears, she said, taking a sip. Leo's eyes sparkled behind his glasses as he started. Well, the Wiltshire family, as you know, was one of the most affluent in the region. But Sir Edgar, in particular, was known for his entrepreneurial ventures. Rumors say that he amassed a wealth far beyond what anyone could fathom. Gold, jewels, valuable artifacts, you name it. Debbie leaned forward, intrigued. But if he was so wealthy, why is there no trace of it now? That, Leo began, adjusting his glasses, is the million-dollar question. Some say he invested it in ventures abroad. Others whisper that he buried it somewhere for Lillian, away from prying eyes. He opened one of the journals, revealing a hand-drawn map of the mansion and its surroundings. Now, this is pure speculation, but there might be hidden chambers or even tunnels under the mansion. Such structures were common in mansions of that era, especially for those involved in, well, let's say, less than legal dealings. Halo, ever the curious pup, sniffed at the journals while Shadow lay observantly by Debbie's side, occasionally glancing at Leo as if trying to gauge his sincerity. And then there's Gerald, Leo continued, a hint of disdain in his voice. Debbie raised an eyebrow. What about him? Leo hesitated for a moment, then said, I've been monitoring his activities for a while now. His keen interest in the mansion isn't just about developing it into a hotel. I've overheard him talking about a big find and how it'll make him richer than he's ever dreamt. Debbie frowned. So, you think he believes in the hidden wealth as well? Leo nodded. Absolutely. And I fear he might go to any lengths to get his hands on it. Debbie sighed, her fingers tapping on her coffee mug. This just got a lot more complicated. An age-old mystery, a potential treasure, and now someone who might be after it for all the wrong reasons. Leo reached out, placing a reassuring hand on hers. But remember, you're not alone in this. Together, with some help from our furry detectives, he winked at Hello and Shadow. We can solve this puzzle and ensure the mansion's legacy remains untarnished. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the soft ticking of the wall clock and Halo's occasional playful bark. The weight of the mystery pressed on them, but there was also a palpable excitement in the air, a thrill of the chase. "Well, then," Debbie said, determination in her voice, "we better get started. Time to uncover the secrets of the Wiltshire Mansion." And as the morning sun streamed in, casting a golden glow on the room, the unlikely trio, a retired baker, a young historian, and 2 loyal Labradors, set forth on an adventure that promised danger, discovery, and a dash of delicious baked goods. Chapter 9. Essence and Suspicion. The Wiltshire Mansion seemed more ominous than ever on that cloudy evening. The soft glow from candlelight streamed through the windows, and the distant sound of an owl echoed, as if setting the scene for what was to come. Debbie, Halo, and Shadow made their way to the grand ballroom, the chosen place for Sylvia's essence. Sylvia, with her flowing violet robes and silver hair cascading over her shoulders, was setting up the room. A large circular table sat in the center, with a deep purple velvet cloth covering it. On it was an assortment of crystals, incense, burners, and an ornate silver candelabrum holding 7 white candles. "Debbie," Sylvia greeted, her eyes narrowing for a second at the sight of the 2 dogs, but then softening. "I see you've brought our furry friends. I hope they're comfortable with the spiritual realm." Debbie chuckled. "Oh, trust me. These 2 have seen their share of mysteries. They'll be just fine." As the other attendees arrived, Leo and Phyllis among them, the room began to hum with anticipation. Gerald, however, was notably absent. With everyone seated, Sylvia began to speak in a low, rhythmic voice. "We are here to contact the spirit of Sir Edgar Wiltshire, to seek answers and find closure. I urge everyone to remain calm, no matter what you see or hear. The spirit realm is sensitive, and our energies can influence it." The air grew colder, making Debbie clutch her cardigan tightly. Halo and Shadow, sensing the change, huddled close to her, their eyes focused intently on the center of the table. Sylvia began to chant, her voice harmonizing with the eerie wail of the wind outside. As the candles flickered, a shadow seemed to dance around the room. And then a soft whisper floated through the air, "Lillian." Debbie's heart raced. She looked around, trying to find the source of the voice. But before she could process it, a series of loud bangs echoed through the mansion, startling everyone in the room. The SONC was broken. Halo, with his ever-curious nature, dashed towards the direction of the noise, with Shadow close behind. Debbie, Leo, and the rest hurriedly followed, tracing the dogs to the mansion's grand library. To their astonishment, a bookshelf had swung open, revealing a hidden passage. The passage was dark, with only a few sporadic torches lighting the way. But it was the walls that captured Debbie's attention. They were adorned with portraits, similar to the one Halo had discovered, but these showed other members of the Wiltshire family. Sylvia, looking pale, hesitated at the entrance. "I warned you," she whispered. "This place. It's not just Sir Edgar. There are other spirits, troubled ones. This passage holds memories, secrets. It's not safe." Leo, ever the brave historian, stepped forward. "We need to explore it, Sylvia. For Sir Edgar, for the truth." Phyllis, clutching a small pendant around her neck, nodded. "My family's legacy is in these walls. I want answers." Debbie took a deep breath, looking down at Halo and Shadow. They seemed eager, tails wagging, ready for another adventure. "All right," she said with determination. "Let's see where this leads. But we must stick together." And so, the group ventured into the passage, unaware of the layers of mysteries that awaited them, with only their unity and the loyalty of two Labradors to guide them through the shadows of the past. Chapter 10. The Property Plot. The next morning, Debbie couldn't shake off the unease that settled over her. Sylvia's warnings about the hidden passage and the spirits that inhabited it weighed heavily on her mind. Shadow and Halo seemed to pick up on her tension, staying close as if to offer reassurance. In an effort to find some semblance of normality, Debbie decided to visit the local cafe. She could use some coffee, and Shadow and Halo would undoubtedly enjoy a walk around town. As they neared the cafe, Shadow's ears perked up, and he began to growl softly. Halo, on the other hand, seemed more curious than concerned. Debbie followed their gaze and saw Gerald, who had been conspicuously absent from the Essence, talking fervently with a sharply dressed man who held a stack of papers in his hands. "What's going on, boys?" Debbie whispered, trusting her dog's instincts. Cautiously, she decided to get closer, ducking behind the thick branches of an old maple tree near the cafe's outdoor seating area. From this vantage point, she could hear Gerald and the stranger's conversation. "Listen, Robert. The deeds must be somewhere," Gerald was saying, his eyes scanning the papers before him. Sir Edgar had no direct descendants, and according to this old family tree, I am the closest living relative. That mansion and the land it stands on should legally be mine. But why all the secrecy, Gerald? Robert, presumably the lawyer, questioned. If you have a legitimate claim, why not come forward openly? Gerald glanced around nervously, then leaned in closer to Robert. You don't understand. There's more at stake here. That old place is rumored to have hidden riches. I need to find them before anyone else does. Do you have any idea how much that would be worth? Debbie's heart was pounding. So, Gerald's intentions weren't just about ownership, they were fueled by greed. He wanted to get his hands on the rumored hidden wealth of the Wiltshire family. But how far was he willing to go for it? Her thoughts were interrupted when Halo, driven by a sudden surge of playfulness, darted out from behind the tree, pulling the leash from Debbie's hand. In a flash, he was at the cafe, enthusiastically sniffing around the table where Gerald and Robert sat. Gah, get this dog away from me, Gerald exclaimed, stumbling backward and dropping some of the papers he held. Oh, I'm so sorry. Debbie rushed forward, grabbing Halo's leash. He's usually very well behaved. He must have smelled your breakfast or something. Robert chuckled. It's all right. Dogs will be dogs, after all. But Gerald did not share the sentiment. His face was red, a mixture of embarrassment and barely contained rage. Maybe you should keep better control of your animals, Gerald sneered. I assure you, they're more controlled than you might think, Debbie replied, locking eyes with him for a moment before walking away. As they left, Shadow picked up one of the papers that Gerald had dropped. Debbie quickly glanced at it. It was a copy of an old Wiltshire family tree, with several names circled in red. What caught her eye was a small handwritten note at the corner. Find the deeds before the Essence reveals all. Debbie felt a chill down her spine. If she had any doubts about Gerald's intentions, they were now laid to rest. He was searching for something valuable enough to keep hidden. And as Halo and Shadow led her back home, tails wagging in the morning sun, Debbie realized that the mansion was not just a structure of bricks and mystery. It was a treasure chest, and everyone seemed to hold a key. But what would happen when it finally opened? And who could she truly trust as the guardians of its secrets? Chapter 11. Shadows of Deception. After the enlightening encounter with Gerald, Debbie felt an urgency to return to the mansion. Halo and Shadow, perhaps sensing her purpose, led the way with animated strides. The mansion's imposing silhouette awaited them, its mysteries beckoning. Using the front entrance, they ventured into the heart of the house, where Shadow suddenly diverted his course. Pressing his nose against a part of the wooden paneling on the wall, Halo joined in, both dogs fixated on the spot. Intrigued, Debbie pressed and prodded the area, finally finding a hidden lever nestled amidst the intricate carvings. As the wall slowly swung inward, a rush of stale air greeted them, revealing an entrance to another concealed room. With bated breath, Debbie stepped in, Shadow and Halo on her heels. The room was dimly lit by the soft glow filtering through a dusty window, but it was enough to see that they had found what appeared to be Sir Edgar's personal study. The room was adorned with shelves of books, many with worn leather spines, hinting at their antiquity. An ornate wooden desk dominated the room's center, scattered with an array of documents and letters. Debbie's eyes, however, were drawn to a peculiarly empty space on the wall, an obvious void amidst portraits of various family members. Approaching the desk, Debbie began to sift through the papers, searching for any clues. She uncovered what seemed to be a handwritten will. As she skimmed through it, a particular section caught her attention. To the one who has captured my heart and soul, I bequeath Wiltshire Mansion, with all its history and secrets. This is a sanctuary for us, a place where our love can live on. Debbie gasped. The implications were clear. Sir Edgar had intended the mansion for his lover. Could this woman be the missing figure from the portrait gallery? The empty frame had been waiting for her image, and it was yet to be filled. Halo, ever the curious one, began tugging at a folded piece of paper peeking out from an old journal. Debbie gently took it and unfolded the brittle paper. It was a sketch, finely drawn with great attention to detail. It depicted a beautiful woman with striking features and an enigmatic smile. Beneath the image, in Sir Edgar's handwriting, read, "To my dearest, whose portrait will soon grace our walls, immortalizing our undying love." The weight of the discovery was profound. Sir Edgar's love story, though shrouded in mystery, was coming to light. A love so powerful he had left his ancestral home to this woman. Shadow whined, drawing Debbie's attention to a drawer slightly ajar in the desk. Inside, she found a string of letters tied with a faded red ribbon. The letters, penned by Sir Edgar, were addressed to a woman named Lillian. Each letter spoke of their secret rendezvous, their shared dreams, and plans for a future together. Sir Edgar frequently mentioned his intention to publicly acknowledge their relationship and to formally introduce Lillian to society in a grand celebration. Debbie felt a profound sadness. Whatever had transpired all those years ago, it was evident that their love story had been cut tragically short. The empty frame was a testament to their incomplete tale. Halo and Shadow seemed to share Debbie's reflective mood, their tails wagging slower, heads bowed, as if paying homage to the poignant past of the mansion. As they exited the study, Debbie felt a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just about solving the mystery anymore. It was about giving a voice to a love story that had been silenced for decades. The shadows of deception were beginning to lift, revealing the heart of Wiltshire Mansion. She knew her next step was to find out more about Lillian. Who was she? And what had befallen her after Sir Edgar's mysterious death? The mansion, it seemed, still held many secrets, and Debbie was more determined than ever to unravel them. Chapter 12. Revelations and Red Herrings. Returning to the mansion the following day, Debbie couldn't shake off the tingling anticipation that coursed through her. Armed with the pendant that Shadow had discovered earlier, she felt she was on the cusp of another revelation. With Halo and Shadow at her heels, they made their way back to the grand hallway, where portraits of the Wiltshire family were proudly displayed. It didn't take long for Debbie to locate the portrait that drew her attention. A regal-looking lady, presumably from the Wiltshire lineage, wore an elegant necklace, which clearly had a pendant missing. The pendant in Debbie's hand was a perfect match. Debbie's concentration was broken by the unexpected appearance of Phyllis, who seemed to have a habit of materializing at the most curious moments. With widened eyes, she observed that pendant. "It was stolen from me many years ago." Taken aback, Debbie gently inquired, "How did you come to possess it?" Phyllis hesitated, her gaze flitting between the portrait and Debbie. "It was handed down through generations. I'm a distant relative of the Wiltshires, though many don't acknowledge it," she said, a touch of bitterness in her voice. "But the pendant's theft. It was one of the many reasons I distanced myself from this place." Though Phyllis's claim was compelling, there was an undercurrent of evasiveness that didn't sit well with Debbie. She decided to probe further. "Do you know the lady in this portrait?" Phyllis looked at the painting, her expression softening. "That's Lady Abigail Wiltshire. She was known for her beauty and her generous spirit. The necklace was said to have been a gift from a suitor, though she never married him." The narrative was becoming more intriguing. A stolen pendant, a suitor, and now Phyllis's claim to it. As Debbie pondered, she noticed Leo entering the mansion, making a beeline for the study. His movements were hurried, almost furtive. The historian had previously portrayed himself as a mere enthusiast. But his keen interest in the study seemed to suggest otherwise. Curious, Debbie decided to follow him discreetly, with halo and shadow padding softly behind her. As she neared the study, she noticed the door slightly ajar, allowing her to glimpse Leo intently examining Sir Edgar's journal. He seemed particularly interested in a marked page, frequently glancing at a folded map he held. Unable to contain her curiosity, Debbie pushed the door wider and entered. "Finding anything interesting, Leo?" she asked, a hint of skepticism in her voice. Caught off guard, Leo fumbled with the journal, quickly closing it. "Debbie, I was just doing some research." "This mansion's history is captivating," he responded, clearly flustered. She motioned to the map in his hand. "And what might that be?" Leo hesitated, then sighed. "It's a map of the mansion and its grounds. I found it in the local archives. There's mention of a secret chamber, but I've been unable to locate it." Debbie's intrigue deepened. A secret chamber could be the missing piece to this sprawling puzzle. But Leo's evasiveness raised more questions than answers. Why the secrecy? Was he merely an enthusiastic historian, or was there more to his story? Exiting the study, the mansion's walls seemed to pulse with whispered secrets, with both Phyllis and Leo adding layers to the mystery. Was Phyllis's claim about the pendant genuine? And what was Leo seeking in the hidden chamber? The day had unearthed more questions than answers, and Debbie knew that every revelation was accompanied by red herrings. Deciphering the truth from the deception was becoming a tantalizing challenge, one that she, Halo, and Shadow were determined to unravel. The trio left the mansion, the setting sun casting elongated shadows that seemed symbolic of the deepening mystery. Chapter 13. The Secret Chamber. Night had fallen when Debbie, along with Halo and Shadow, returned to Wiltshire Mansion. She couldn't shake off the words Leo had mentioned about a hidden chamber. With Sir Edgar's diary tucked under her arm, she was determined to find it. The old pages, yellowed and fragile, were filled with Sir Edgar's musings, poetry, and day-to-day accounts. Debbie turned to the entry marked by an old, dried rose. In elegant script, it detailed a specific night, a dance under the crescent moon in the mansion's grand ballroom. And there, in coded words and riddles, were hints to the chamber's location. Halo, ever the mischievous one, began to playfully tug on a hanging tapestry. Debbie's initial impulse was to chide him, but then she noticed something peculiar. Shadow began sniffing the floor beneath the tapestry intently. Debbie crouched down beside him and felt along the wooden paneling. Her fingers brushed against an odd indentation, and when she pressed, there was a soft click. Slowly, a section of the floor began to lift, revealing a hidden staircase descending into darkness. Heart pounding, Debbie took a lantern and began her descent, the dogs closely following. The air grew colder, the atmosphere dense with history and secrets. At the bottom, a heavy oak door greeted them. Taking a deep breath, Debbie pushed it open. The chamber was surprisingly spacious, lined with bookshelves filled with old manuscripts, letters, and trinkets. At its center stood a grand wooden desk, atop which lay a single sealed envelope addressed to my dearest love. Debbie picked up the letter, carefully breaking the seal. Sir Edgar's handwriting sprawled across the pages. My dearest. As I pen this, the weight of our secret love bears heavy on my heart. For too long, we have hidden in the shadows, our love a silent melody in the cacophony of societal expectations. My greatest regret is not shouting our love from the mansion's highest tower, not holding you close in the light of day. I know now the price of such secrecy. Whispers reach my ear, tales of your delicate condition. If they are true, if there is a testament to our love growing within you, I swear on the stars above, I will protect you both. Should you ever find this letter, know that the empty portrait frame in our family gallery was meant for you, my love, my life. And if fate is kind, perhaps one day, our child will know the truth of our love and the legacy we leave behind. Forever yours, Edgar. Tears pricked Debbie's eyes as she finished the letter. The depth of Sir Edgar's love, the weight of their secret, and the implication of an unborn child added layers of poignancy to the mansion's mystery. Halo, sensing the heaviness of the moment, nuzzled Debbie's hand, while Shadow, ever the attentive guardian, stood watch by the door. The trio remained in the chamber, absorbing the gravity of their discovery. It was clear now that the mansion held tales of tragic love, deep regrets, and hidden legacies. As Debbie, Halo, and Shadow ascended the staircase, emerging once more into the mansion's grand hallway, Debbie felt a renewed sense of purpose. Sir Edgar and his lover's story deserved to be told, their legacy remembered, and she was determined to uncover every piece of the puzzle. Chapter 14. Unveiling the Truth. The morning sun poured through the tall windows of Wiltshire Mansion's grand sitting room. The golden rays lent an ethereal glow to the dust motes dancing in the air, as Debbie took a seat opposite Phyllis. Halo and Shadow, sensing the gravity of the conversation to come, settled by Debbie's feet. Phyllis, despite her advanced age, had an undeniable regality about her. Her steel-gray eyes held secrets of yesteryears, secrets that Debbie was determined to uncover. Debbie began gently. Phyllis, I found Sir Edgar's chamber and his letter. It spoke of a love he hid from the world and a child that might have been born from that union. She hesitated, then added, I believe that child is you. Phyllis's eyes brimmed with tears, but she nodded. It's true. My mother was that forbidden love, and I am the testament to their hidden romance. Why keep it a secret for so long? Debbie asked. Phyllis took a deep breath. For protection, dear. The world wasn't kind to women like my mother, especially not when involved with a man of Sir Edgar's stature. She fled the mansion when she was with child, ensuring I was borne away from prying eyes. Edgar had planned for us to reunite, for the mansion to be mine. But his sudden death changed everything. Debbie recalled the diary entries and the mysterious circumstances surrounding Sir Edgar's death. He died in an accident, didn't he? Phyllis nodded. Yes. He was in the midst of hiding evidence of our existence, securing the mansion's future for me. A loose floorboard on the main staircase was his unfortunate downfall. Debbie furrowed her brow. But why did Gerald want the mansion so badly? Phyllis's lips tightened. Gerald discovered the truth years ago. He found letters my mother wrote to Edgar, letters detailing their love and my birth. He's been trying to use that information, blackmailing me, attempting to push his false claim to the mansion. I've been fighting him quietly for years. Halo growled softly, probably picking up on the tension in the room, while Shadow placed a reassuring paw on Debbie's knee. The puzzle pieces fell into place for Debbie. So the secrecy, the rumors about hauntings, the missing portrait, it was all to protect you and your mother. Phyllis nodded. The missing portrait was meant for my mother, as Edgar mentioned in his letter. But after his death, my mother felt it best to keep her distance, to protect me. But now, I've returned to claim what's rightfully mine. The room was silent for a moment, save for the ticking of the grand clock. Then Debbie spoke, determination clear in her voice. We need to expose Gerald for the schemer he is. This mansion is your heritage, Phyllis, and no one should take it from you. Phyllis's eyes shimmered with gratitude. Thank you, Debbie. I faced this battle alone for so long. With you by my side, I believe we can finally bring the truth to light. Debbie squeezed Phyllis's hand reassuringly, the bond between them cemented. With 2 loyal dogs and an old mansion whispering its stories, they were ready to unveil the truth and ensure justice was served. Chapter 15: Wiltshire's New Dawn. Wiltshire Mansion stood transformed. The decaying facade was rejuvenated, with the stonework cleaned and ivy neatly trimmed. The grandeur of the mansion, lost to years of neglect and overgrown vegetation, was finally restored. And at the heart of this renaissance was Leo. As the newly appointed curator, Leo had poured his heart and soul into reviving the mansion's lost glory. Each room was meticulously renovated, reflecting the historical significance of the place. Plaques adorned the walls, detailing the mansion's fascinating history, with special emphasis on the love story of Sir Edgar and Phyllis's mother. Debbie stood at the mansion's entrance, Halo and Shadow by her side, taking in the transformation. It's beautiful, isn't it, boys? She murmured, her gaze wandering over the intricately carved banisters and refurbished chandeliers that sparkled brilliantly. Halo barked in agreement, wagging his tail, while Shadow let out a contented sigh, his eyes reflecting the beauty around him. Leo approached them, a smile of satisfaction lighting up his face. I'm glad you could make it for the opening, Debbie, he said, extending a hand. It's been a labor of love, but seeing the mansion like this, it's all worth it. Debbie grinned, shaking his hand firmly. It's incredible, Leo. Sir Edgar would have been proud. Inside, a dedicated section told the story of the hidden romance between Sir Edgar and Phyllis's mother. An empty frame was now filled with a portrait of a beautiful woman, her eyes echoing the same regality that Phyllis held. It was accompanied by a loving note from Sir Edgar, allowing visitors to grasp the depth of their relationship. Phyllis, looking regal in a vintage dress, stood near the portrait. I wanted everyone to know the truth, she said to Debbie, her voice filled with emotion. This is the legacy I want to leave behind, a tale of love that transcended societal norms. And as for Gerald, the weight of his deceit had finally caught up with him. Thanks to the evidence found and testimonies from both Phyllis and Debbie, he faced legal consequences for his blackmail and fraudulent claims. His once smug demeanor was now replaced with one of regret and defeat. The mansion grounds bustled with activity. Children playing on the lush lawns and families picnicking under the shade of ancient trees. The haunting aura that once surrounded Wiltshire Mansion was replaced with laughter and joy. Debbie couldn't help but think that this was precisely the kind of legacy Sir Edgar would have wanted. She looked down at Halo and Shadow. Our work here is done, she whispered to them. Halo, ever the playful one, barked and nudged Debbie's hand, looking for a treat. Shadow, on the other hand, sat regally, his wise eyes taking in the surroundings, knowing he'd played his part in changing the mansion's destiny. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Wiltshire Mansion, Debbie, Halo, and Shadow made their way home. The path ahead was filled with the promise of more adventures, more mysteries to unravel. But for now, they were content, their bond stronger than ever. The tale of Wiltshire Mansion, with its secrets and love stories, would live on. But for Debbie, the true treasure was the journey she'd undertaken and the friends she'd made along the way. The mansion, in its renewed splendor, stood as a testament to the past's power and the promise of new beginnings.